Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, released in October 2024, marked the return of the iconic Budokai Tenkaichi series, a game that was 17 years in the making. In those 17 years, many other Dragon Ball games have come and gone, like the Raging Blast games, Battle of Z, Fighters, Kakarot, but none have had the longevity quite like the Xenoverse games, specifically Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. This was released in 2016, and despite being almost a decade old at this point, it still has a very large and very loyal player base. So today I'm actually going to be comparing these two modern Dragon Ball juggernauts as I put Xenoverse 2 against Sparking Zero. Make sure you drop a thumbs up on this video. By liking, you really help support us, and also if you don't, Beerus will hakai you. So better like and subscribe right now, and let's get down to business. Let's start with the gameplay. Xenoverse 2 offers a unique blend of RPG elements and fast-paced combat. Players can create their own characters and customize their abilities, which adds a personal touch to the gameplay. The combat system is dynamic with a mix of melee and ki-based attacks, along with a variety of combos and special moves. You have a hub world where you can explore and free roam while interacting with different characters, including some familiar ones. I'll go into more detail about this a bit later. But in combat, you are put in a big arena where you can move around freely. You can find items like capsules and Dragon Balls, or even secret enemies. The combos are very basic and easy to understand, with you just mixing in various different combinations of square and triangle. You also have access to different super attacks and ultimates as well. While it isn't perfect, I'd say it feels authentic to what an actual Dragon Ball anime fight would go like. Character models though are a bit of a mixed bag for me. They range from possible to downright horrible. I love the variety and atmosphere of the playable maps though. I think that the score is incredibly well. I really like the music, and it just adds so much to the whole presentation. It is very satisfying to play. On the other hand, Sparking Zero revives the nostalgic Budokai Tenkaichi formula of gameplay. It focuses a bit more on traditional fighting game mechanics with a straightforward approach, although the balance leaves a lot more to be desired in some cases. The controls are accessible, making it easy for newcomers to jump in. It's a 3D open arena fighter just like its predecessors, and also does well at replicating attacks and movements that characters would use in an actual Dragon Ball fight. I love the art style and the character models, although there are a few glaring problems and options as well. I enjoy the look and the atmosphere of the stages and environments as well, but they are quite limited in numbers. The music is pretty fire as well. As for the overall gameplay, I'd say that it looks sick for the most part, but it can be very stiff at times. There's passive skills and power-ups as well as super attacks and ultimate attacks as well. While it can be very explosive, there's also cases where the game lacks a lot of impact, a lot of oomph, if you will. Now let's talk about the story mode. In Xenoverse 2, you play as your custom character as a member of the Time Patrol. These are people responsible for keeping history and the timelines intact. So you spend the story mode going through the various historic battles of Dragon Ball, stopping the bad guys from messing with history and powering up the villains. You basically make sure things play out as smoothly as possible, even if you have to help Goku and his friends directly. It's a cool way to freshen up the heavily overdone story in the Dragon Ball games. We also get a lot more unique story content as well as a result of DLC and updates. More on this later though, but basically there is a lot of story to play here. The Sparking Zero story mode is a bit more traditional, in the sense that you are playing through the story of Dragon Ball, but you have a selection of Goku, Piccolo, Trunks, Vegeta, Gohan, Jiren, Frieza, and Goku Black to choose from, and you basically play through all of their major roles and battles throughout the story of Dragon Ball. It isn't linear though, because there are branching parts and what ifs to go along with it, with some really cool ideas and concepts. However, fans felt like this mode was sorely lacking from actual cutscenes and criticized the length of certain character stories. Like, for example, Vegeta's story does not go past the end of Dragon Ball Z, the Kid Buu fight, which I find is very problematic. Also, what didn't help was the fact that the DLC packs did very little to add more story content either. Sparking Zero's story can be a fun ride, especially when getting the what ifs and the hidden scenarios, but it is deeply overflowed. It's deeply flawed overall. Now let's talk about the roster. Xenoverse 2 actually has a pretty decent roster, even if you don't factor in the DLC. It has basically every important character in the Dragon Ball franchise up until like 2015, so that was like just before release. So I'd say Resurrection F. But then when you factor in the DLC, it is constantly getting new characters from Dragon Ball Super, movies, Dragon Ball Daima, and even some characters from Dragon Ball Z and GT that it missed out on. And also, most characters have different outfits which have different movesets which add more depth to them. Like, for example, Goku will have different outfits and moves depending on which point in the series it takes place, from the beginning of DBZ all the way up to Dragon Ball Super. There's even a customizable slot that allows you to customize an existing character with whatever moves or whatever colors you want their outfit to be. So the roster is pretty sizable and it is constantly adding new characters. Also, couple that with all the custom characters that you can make, and there's a lot of variety to choose from, honestly, and I think that there's a lot of depth and detail with each character. The Sparking Zero roster is heavily inspired by Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3. The roster has just about anyone you can think of, whether they're an important character or not, all from all aspects of Dragon Ball up until Dragon Ball Super Broly the movie. Characters with a lot of screen time like Goku, for example, are split into different slots like Kid Goku, Goku Early, Goku Mid, Goku End, Goku Super, and Goku GT. Dragon Ball Super characters make their debut in the series for the first time, with some characters even making their playable game debut, period. So a lot of fans were quite excited to play as them and test them out in this style of game. The DLC packs add even more characters, like characters from Dragon Ball Super Hero like Beast Gohan, and also Dragon Ball Daima. But the game oddly didn't include Super 17 from Dragon Ball GT, who is in Xenoverse 2 and Budokai Tenkaichi 3. We'll always have this Super 17 though, I guess. In terms of character movesets and costumes though, while the moves don't change based on what outfits you choose, unlike in Xenoverse, your character's moves will change if you transform during battle. There are also some customization capabilities, but the impact of this is quite limited. Honestly though, I think both games have really strong rosters with a lot of variety going for them. I can't fault them both from a casual point of view. Lots of characters and forms and moves. Now, let's talk about the game modes. This is where Xenoverse 2, in my opinion, slaughters the hell out of Sparking Zero. Even without the DLC and online, I think Xenoverse 2 is packed with content. It took me a good while to finish this game up until on my first playthrough where, I didn't have access to the internet, I just had the offline version. So I still spent quite a bit of time on this game. In addition to the story mode, you could play parallel quests, which are side missions that allow you to unlock various different characters and collect valuable items like Dragon Balls, capsules to use during fights, as well as clothing items and super attacks and ultimate attacks that you can equip to your custom character. And since things aren't always guaranteed to drop, people replay these a ton in hopes of getting the thing that they are looking for. People grind these offline and online to farm whatever they want basically. You can also travel around the hub world and ask different characters from the series to be your master and train you, which allows you to learn more of their moves as well. There's also these missions that take place on Frieza's spaceship, Planet Namek, Capsule Corp, Majin Buu's house, and Hercule's house. If I missed anything out, by the way, please let me know in the comments, because there is a lot to go through. When going into DLC and updates though, the game adds even more content, like the Hero Colosseum. This is a mode where you collect figures from different characters and build teams out of them, and then you battle against an opponent. It even has its own dedicated story mode as well. The main story also gets content from DLC packs as well, and there's a bunch of other special events and raids to enjoy. Of course, there's online multiplayer where you can either battle players or team up on quests or just hang out in the hub world even. Again, if I didn't mention anything, let me know in the comments, because there's a ton of stuff to do and a lot of variety, which I love. Sparking Zero, on the other hand, outside of its story that I already mentioned, has its online capabilities also. This is the most polarizing thing about the game though, because this mode has so much stock in it, but it barely functions at all. Whether it's having trouble finding matches, unbalanced characters and exploits, the mode is just a giant mess, and it makes people not want to play at all. And that isn't good, considering that there isn't much else to offer in the game outside of that. You can play local battles against the CPU or your friend using split screen, which is a nice throwback to the days where we'd invite our friends over to play BT3. There's also a tournament mode which allows you to grind and get Zenny, which you can unlock characters and costumes with by spending Zenny. And there's also the custom battle mode. This is the mode that had so much hype and promise and potential, but ultimately, I had to get tongue-tied and twisted over my disbelief there. But the custom battle mode was ultimately a mode that ended up being a massive failure and disappointment on every scale. Players were excited at the thought of being able to make up their own playable stories and be able to share them with other people and also play other people's stories, but the mode is just very underwhelming and bare bones. If expectations were met, then honestly the replay value of this game would have gone up tenfold, at least tenfold, I would say, but it unfortunately fell very flat. There's nothing else of note to really go over in terms of game mode, unless you want to know about what Chi-Chi, Bulma and Videl think of everyone in the game, which is admittedly entertaining, but that's about it for Sparking Zero really. Ultimately, Xenoverse 2 as a whole is the superior game to Sparking Zero. While Sparking Zero brought back a beloved series with a modern twist, the game failed to keep players hooked and lacked variety and content for players to enjoy. The online mode is broken, custom battles disappointed, the story mode was lackluster. The only reason I can see people really playing is local multiplayer, which is very niche. It's for a very niche group of people. DBSZ had a very good foundation. It had the tools, but didn't really apply them well. Xenoverse 2, on the other hand, is just a machine with tons of content and tons of different stuff to do with various different modes to enjoy that actually function. Like, they actually are playable. People can say that this game should have ended by now and it gets milked too much, and I understand why, but players keep coming back to it. But what about Dragon Ball Legends? Does this hit mobile game compare to Sparking Zero? Is Budokai Tenkaichi 3 better than Raging Blast 2? Click a video on screen to find out more, and Xenoverse 2 is better than Sparking Zero. Sparking Zero is a disappointment. Peace.